Come now, to declare with joy our resilience, to proclaim on purpose, we have survived. We are surviving. We have pivoted and we have planned and then replanned and then thrown all plans to the wind. In this circle, we will say without shame, some days we lost our way. And we have not always been our best selves, and we are learning, and not always quickly, to regroup and remember perfection was never the point. We are here because we long to try again, to promise with people to be partners in this long-haul work of loving and becoming, even while we grieve also at the cost, which is not small and lingers in our hearts and turns only sometimes to rage. Here, let your body tell the truth. Shake free the stories that live in your skin. Breathe in your beauty and breathe out your burdens. Breathe in our beauty and breathe out our burdens. Be here with it all, with all of us. In the freedom of this new day, the storm is passing over, the sun is breaking through, this new day dawns for us all. Come and let us worship together. I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, Morning Has Come. It's number 1000 in the teal hymnals, and of course the words are on the screen as well.
Morning has come, I'll rise and greet the day, dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
And I invite you to remain risen for our chalice lighting, and then after that, our covenant words.
Our chalice lighting words are by Annie Forrester. Come now out of the darkness of our unknowing and the dusk of our dreaming. Come now from far places. Come now into the twilight of our awakening and the reflection of our gathering. Come we now all together. We bring unilluminated our dark caves of doubting. We seek unbedazzled the clear light of understanding. May the sparks of our joining kindle our resolve, brighten our spirits, reflect our love, and unshadow our days. Come, we now enter the dawning.
Now I invite you to join me in saying our covenant words together, first in English and then in Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto.
Good morning and welcome to the Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Aimee Noel. My pronouns are she, her, and I am happy to serve as your worship associate today. A quick reminder for those here, please make sure to silence your phones. And as we gather together, let us take a moment to remember this land is the traditional land of the Tongva, Kizh, Chumash, Tataviam, and Tataviam peoples, past and present. Let us honor the land itself and those who have graced it across generations. It's good to see those of you that are here in the sanctuary today, and I'd also like to send a warm welcome to those of you joining us online. As we explore this month's theme of wintering, this morning our service is about emerging from hibernation, which a lot of us have been doing naturally over the winter months. But for many of us, we are still emerging from a hibernation that has lasted almost 3 years now. Throughout the service, we'll be exploring why that emerging is important and what we might be missing. And in that spirit, if you are joining online, we want to encourage you to consider joining us in person if you're willing and able to more actively engage with this gathered community. We would love to see you here. Emerson is committed to striving towards justice and inclusion for all, embracing diversity of age, race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, class, and ability. You are valued and welcome here.
So, for our story for all ages this morning, we have a wonderful book called Outside In by Deborah Underwood and illustrated by Cindy Derby. Once, we were part of outside, and outside was part of us. There was nothing between us. Now, sometimes even when we're outside, we are inside. We forget that outside is there. So outside reminds us with flashes at the window and slow magic tricks. It sends the sunset and shadows inside to play. Outside sings to us with chirps and rustles and tap-taps on the roof. It beckons with smells, sun-baked, fresh, and mysterious. Outside feeds us. Sun, rain, and seeds become warm bread and berries. Outside cuddles us in clothes, once puffs of cotton. It holds us in wooden chairs, once trees. We feel outside in the warm weight of our cats and the rough fur of our dogs. Outside shows us there is a time to rest and a time to start fresh. Outside steals inside, a spider seeking shelter, a box elder bug in the bath, a tiny snail on kale. Even rivers come inside, cool water rushing, eager to return to the sea. I'm here, outside says. I miss you. Outside waits, and we answer. You know, I love that story. The pictures are beautiful, but it's a reminder of our interconnectedness with all of that is outside. And so I know for some of us, you know, over these past 3-4 weeks, we've had a lot of rain, and a lot of us may have been missing the outside, spending a lot more time inside. And so I'm looking forward to tomorrow, a little later in the day, when the rains will stop, and in the next few days we'll have lots of sun, because I certainly have been missing the outside. And so this story is about how important that outside is, being outside, being in nature, but there's also other things that are outside. There's people outside and community outside. And so as many of us spend these cold winter months inside, is a reminder that there is always wonderful stuff waiting outside for us. And now I invite you to join me in saying our Unitarian Universalist affirmation. If you know the hand signals, you can do them with me. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands.
And these are our offering words today. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many small congregations. No matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members, each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources helps make that grand vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. And the ushers will come around to take our offering here in the sanctuary, and then you can also make a contribution through the Vanco mobile app or on our website at emersonuuc.org, or send a check to our sanctuary here in Canoga Park. We gratefully receive this morning's offerings.
receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
This is a meditation on the 4 directions, adapted from Julia Hamilton. In the pagan tradition and many indigenous traditions, there's a practice of calling in the 4 directions, each associated with an element of our natural world and representing some part of our human nature as well. The directions are not seen as separate and isolated, but rather as part of the interdependent system that makes up the world. Here on our altar, we have the symbolic elements for each direction, and we will travel through the meanings associated with each direction before entering into a time of meditation. We begin in the east, toward the rising sun. The element of the east is air, represented on our altar by a feather. Air and breath give us life. It is the direction of inspiration, the word that literally means to take in air. The east is associated with the mind, with knowledge and learning and intellectual curiosity. Imagine the birds turning and wheeling in the air. Imagine the breeze blowing through your hair. Turning towards the east, we look for a fresh start, an invigorating breath, a new idea. When you are feeling stuck in a rut, beholden to a routine, or if the wind has gone out of your sails, look eastward.
We move around the wheel to the south. The element of the south is fire. And in the southern place on our altar, I have raised this flame with fire from our chalice. Fire is a transformative force. It is heat and light and powerful change. In the northern hemisphere, it makes sense that we associate the south, toward the equator, with the warmth of the sun and the heat of the flame. We see birds move south, butterflies move south, whales move south, seeking warmer places when the weather gets cold. When our internal weather gets cold, turning south is a metaphor toward turning toward warmth and daylight, seeking out the changes that will warm us up, get our blood moving, call us out of our winters, out of our hibernation, and into action.
Continuing around the circle, we arrive in the west. The element of the west is water. And here on our altar, we have some of the water collected at our in-gathering services each September. We add to this water each year, symbolizing the ways we come together in our community as individual drops join into a mighty river. In the West, we are drawn into the experience of our emotions. It is a direction that calls us to self-reflection and self-understanding. Our emotions move in us like water, flowing through our lives, sometimes calm, and sometimes turbulent, but always flowing. When we dam up our feelings, just like when we dam up a river, the pressure builds until it finds an outlet. If you are seeking to get in touch with your inner life, your emotions, turn toward the west.
We move now to the north. The element of the north is earth, represented here by some dirt from our very own garden. There is stability here, the ground of our own being. The north represents the place that holds us, that allows us the time and space to heal and grow, to feel nurtured and respected. It is also the place of embodiment, of connecting with our physical self, with the concrete, tangible world around us. The north calls to you if you are seeking balance, the deep wisdom that lives in your bones, a place of rest and recovery. We have moved through these 4 directions, given them shape and meaning. Although our service this morning invites us to come out of our hibernation, we may be in many different places this morning. And so I invite you to turn towards the direction that calls to you today in just a moment. Is it east, air, breath, and inspiration? South, fire, transformation, and action? West, water, feeling, and reflection? North, earth, balance, and wisdom. And so I invite you to turn towards the direction that calls to you today. You can stay in your seat or you can stand. You can turn your head or your whole body, but orient yourself towards one of the directions, that element that speaks to you and your life right now. And when I ring our singing bowl, we will enter into 2 minutes of silent meditation. now invite you to join me in singing Lady of the Seasons, Laughter. It's number 51 in your gray hymnals, and you're invited to remain in your seats.
Lady of the seasons, laughter, in the summer warmth be near. When the winter follows after, teach our spirits not to fear. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning year. Sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay. Here among us till the far lights of tomorrow's dawning ray. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning day. Mother of the generations, in whose love all life is worth, everlasting celebrations bring our labors safe to birth. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning earth. Goddess of all time's progression, stand with us when we engage, hands and hearts to end oppression, writing history's fairer page. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning age.
Every Sunday, we take time in our service to lift up the joys and sorrows from within our world and in the wider community. This week in our book of life, Lynn Prager writes, thinking of our dear friend Nelson, who is on his transition from this world to the next. And Christine Salem, who writes in our virtual book of life, my father is still having troubles with his neurological issues, and my mother requires surgery on her aorta very soon. Please keep my parents in your thoughts and in your hearts. Our thoughts, too, turn to the flooding across California, which has killed at least 17 people and forced countless thousands from their homes and caused untold damage from flooding and mudslides, even as it has helped ease our prolonged drought. We also lift up the country of Brazil, where the government buildings were stormed last Sunday by right-wing fascists unwilling to accept that their president lost re-election in what I know to many of us felt like an eerie echo of what happened in our country 2 years ago. also to the continuing political upheaval in the neighboring country of Peru, as well as the people of Ukraine still suffering under a barrage of rocket attacks that claim many, many lives, and all of those people without power or shelter or living in fear. And in a moment, I'm going to sound this singing bowl. And after I do, I invite you to speak into this space or to type into the chat if you were joining us online any joys or sorrows, any names or occasions that are on your heart this morning that you would like lifted up into this community in this, our embracing meditation. All that has been shared and all that we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, we offer these into the embrace of this beloved community. This is a call and repeat song. Gonna let life move me.
Gonna let life move me.
Gonna let life stir me deep.
Gonna let life stir me deep.
Gonna let life wake me from an ancient sleep.
Gonna let life wake me from this ancient sleep.
Gonna laugh all my laughter.
Gonna laugh all my laughter.
Gonna cry all my tears.
Gonna cry all my tears.
Gonna love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears.
Gonna love the rain just as deeply as the sun when it clears.
Gonna let life move me.
Gonna let life move me.
Gonna let life stir me deep.
Gonna let life stir me deep.
Gonna let life wake me from an ancient sleep.
Gonna let life wake me from this ancient sleep.
Gonna laugh all my laughter.
Gonna laugh all my laughter.
Gonna cry all my tears.
Gonna cry all my tears.
Gonna love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears.
Gonna love the rain just as deeply as the sun when it clears.
Gonna love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears.
Gonna love the rain just as deeply as the sun when it clears.
The weather recently has made me want to stay inside, to seek shelter from the cold, wind, and rain, to retreat into a cozy comfort zone, to feel safe and secure. One of my greatest joys has been kicking up my couch recliner with a blanket and having one of my 2 sister kittens curl up in my lap and purr. But I'm not used to having this much weather. And I noticed that after several days turned into weeks, my comfort zone no longer felt comfortable. My body felt achy. The natural cycle is to slow down at times, but when the inevitable pause goes on for too long, the safety and security turn to stagnation. Retreat into solitude and reflection turn to isolation. This week I heard a story on NPR about the recently published book, The Good Life: Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness. And they found the strongest predictors of health and happiness were the warmth and quality of relationships with other people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be family or friends. It could be coworkers or fellow congregants of your local UU church. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of them, because everyone is on the spectrum of from introvert to extrovert. So it's about figuring out what depth and breadth of relationships is energizing for you rather than exhausting or frightening. This book talks about social fitness and the importance of tending to our social activities in the same way we might do with physical fitness. There's a saying that the longer you wait to pick up the phone, the heavier it gets. And it's a good reminder that just as our muscles atrophy if we don't use them, we also need to actively engage in our social relationships. I know when my phone starts to feel a little too heavy, it's time for me to pick it up and exercise those social muscles. Our social lives are an important aspect of our engagement in this world, but there's so many other ways to interact as well, with people and nature and books, animals, gadgets, technology, Wordle, everything else that makes up this intricate and amazing world around us. Think of some of the things that excite you and bring joy and meaning to your life. Ponder whether you've been engaging in those aspects of your life. Contemplate some of the things you might want to start engaging with again. A small shift towards reconnecting. And this reminded me of words by Maya Angelou. Love life, engage in it. Give it all you've got. Love it with a passion, because life truly does give back many times over what you put into it.
Beneath the crust of cold earth, the crocuses and the daffodils are stirring in their winter hibernation. The energy of life and living is pulsing in them and in the latent blades of grass and the unseen maple buds. And it's pulsing in us too. The pulse of life calls us to nourish our bodies with good food and movement, to nourish our spirits with art and song, friendship and tenderness and quiet. When we heed the pulse of life, we know what we need to do. To rise in the morning and rest into darkness. To put our hands, hearts, and minds to work. to meet those in our midst with compassion, to join with the vulnerable and speak truth to power, to play with our youngest and hear the wisdom of our elders, to heal the sick and wounded, to grieve the dying and remember the dead, to be of use, and sometimes to be still. The pulse of life is beating in each and every one of us. Amidst the clamor of these times, let us heed its sure and steady rhythm. A few weeks ago, during our winter solstice service, celebrating the darkness and the longest night of the year, I talked about the importance of taking cues from winter, of using the darkness as a reminder to slow down and do less, to heal and hibernate, to get cozy and rest. This is what author Catherine May refers to as wintering in her book of the same name. Wintering is also our worship theme for the month. Now, when one talks about winter when in Southern California, unless you live in the mountains, our experience of winter can be very different from much of the country. And while the days are still shorter and the weather colder, it doesn't snow here, and only some of the trees lose their leaves. And the crocuses and daffodils aren't stirring below ground. They've already sent up their green shoots. But as Aimee noted in her reflection, the heavy rain and the generally overcast weather of the past several weeks have sent a lot of us indoors. And many of us have probably started to feel that time indoors in our bodies and our minds. I know I have. I haven't been spending as much time working in the garden where I find so much of my spiritual grounding. And because I'm not outside as much, I'm also not getting that vitamin D from the sunlight, which can be a real physiological cause of depression for many people. And I've been through enough winters and felt that cycle enough to know the signs of when it's impacting my mood and that I need to spend more time outside or to reach out to others for connection. Perhaps it was no surprise then that last week we invited friends over for dinner on 2 separate occasions, and we also hosted a sleepover with 2 of my daughter's friends, and then had my dad stay over another night. Now, filling my social calendar wasn't really a conscious decision, but I think some part of me knew that if the outside was cold and damp and dreary, that it was important to bring the warmth and brightness of community inside our house. As Catherine May writes, we need to understand the healthy limits of our urge to hide away in winter. In regions where solitude is forced upon communities through impenetrable weather, careful preparations are made to ensure that life remains stimulating and joyful during the dark months. In Nordic communities, it's common to stock the freezer with cakes and pastries over winter, ready to offer hospitality to anyone who comes to the door. The sauna is one of the ways that Finnish people battle against the cold. It is a place of refuge and a place that brings a sense of conviviality during periods of isolation. Chosen or not, our periods of hibernation need to be punctuated with moments of social contact, or else we unravel. This is where the hibernation caused by the pandemic has been so harmful. because it caused that very social contact to decline dramatically. That was the thing that we couldn't do, was get together with friends and family, to the point where some people had no in-person contact for months. I mean, sure, we had phone calls and Zoom, but let's be real, it wasn't the same. Dealing with the ravages of that loss of social contact, many of us went looking for the pulse of life and found it outside, on walks, hikes, and bike rides. We spent time in the garden or sitting in the shade of a tree, finding other ways to be nourished. In a different way, that pulse of life also brought people out into the streets to protest against racial injustice, raising masked, muffled voices in chants of Black Lives Matter, to join with the vulnerable and speak truth to power, to grieve the dying and remember the dead. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and far, far too many more. Many people seem to be coming out of a different sort of hibernation, emerging out of a willful ignorance of and complacency with the institutionalized racism that has been part of this country's history since its founding. That racism wasn't fixed back in the 1960s by Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement, and that we still have a ways to go until we make his dream a reality. And so I just want to take a second to remind folks that when we honor Dr. King tomorrow, that it not be a false narrative of Dr. King as the savior who fixed this country's problems and got it back on the right track, but a reminder of what has been accomplished over these many years through struggle, and also of the struggles that lie ahead of us still. But knowing those struggles lie ahead, let us not lose hope either over all that remains to be done. For the turning of the seasons reminds us that after the storms and ravages of winter comes the new possibilities and growth of spring. Those seasons also remind us that life is not lived linearly. Life is cyclical. It turns around and comes back to itself. And so we have these periods of winter and spring and summer and fall, and we keep going around that cycle bit by bit, hoping for improvement and bending that arc slowly towards justice. And the reality is sometimes spring can take a while to get here. Perhaps it's odd to hold a service about coming out of hibernation and the possibility of spring right now when we aren't even finished with the first month of winter. Although, of course, winter is different here in California. And with the latest storm passing, we can look forward to having a lot more sun in the days ahead. But what drew me to this theme in particular was the metaphorical winter caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have been through a long and stormy season over these past 3 years. And those times when we thought that it was finally clearing up often turned out to be false springs, thrusting us back inside over and over, making some of us wonder, worry that spring might never return. But, and fingers crossed, things are looking up. And it seems like we might be nearing the end of it, as much as something that goes from pandemic to endemic can be said to end. And to varying degrees, we are coming out of hibernation, have been coming out of hibernation. Some of us have already emerged, some of us in the midst of emergence, and others having only taken the first tentative steps out. But emerging from that hibernation can be a real challenge, in part because, well, we've become comfortable in our cozy homes. While lockdown has been difficult in many ways, for some of us, it has been a time of hibernation, a simpler time, fewer decisions to make, fewer interactions with others, more couch time. Became a little bit more comfortable, and we got used to that. But I think the other reason that it's hard sometimes to come out of that hibernation is because the landscape is still changing. It's not the flourishing of summer when everything is in bloom and full of life. It is the messy growth of spring. The good news is we don't have to emerge quickly. And in some ways, I don't think we have been. For a week and a half to 2 weeks after emerging from hibernation, bears go through a stage known as walking hibernation, where they eat very little and sleep long hours and stay close to their den. Their transition back into normal bear activity happens slowly as their metabolism starts to pick back up. Perhaps then it should not surprise us that we too may need to adjust slowly to changes and to give ourselves some grace. As Catherine May, author of Wintering, writes, we must emerge slowly from our wintering. We must test the air and be ready to shrink back into safety when blasted by unseasonable winds. We must gradually unfurl our new leaves. There will still be the debris of a long, disordered season. These are the moments when we have to find the most grace, when we come to atone for the worst ravages of our conduct in darker times, when we have to tell truths we'd rather ignore. Sometimes we will have to name our personal winters, whatever they may be, and the words will feel barbed in our throats. Grief, rejection, depression, and illness, shame, failure, despair. It often seems easier to stay in winter, she continues, burrowed down into our hibernation nests away from the glare of the sun. But we are brave, and the new world awaits us, gleaming and green, alive with the beat of wings. And besides, we have a kind of gospel to tell now, and a duty to share it. We who have wintered have learned some things. We sing it out like birds. We let our voices fill the air. And so in this time of emergence, we may have questions we ask ourselves. How do I find the balance between going out more with enough relaxation at home? As we are increasingly outside, how do we manage our anxieties about COVID still being present? Perhaps the sensory overload of being back amongst people with all the lights and noise may feel overwhelming. I know that I have felt that in moments. So what do we need to do in order to give ourselves permission to go out as much as feels comfortable? Nor should we let go of some of the things that have brought us comfort and sustained us during these difficult times. And so we ask ourselves, what are the self-care rhythms that we may want to continue? Or is this a new season to do something different for exercise or creative expression? How has this time impacted our sense of what is important in our lives. Emerging from hibernation is hard. It is comfy in that den. And yet we know that life goes on and that bears, of course, they do not stay hibernating all year long. It, in fact, takes a lot of energy. They come out in the spring without having burned off all of that body fat and need sustenance coming out, as do we. And so as I come to a close, I want to end with these words from our current U.S. Poet Laureate, Ada Limon, who writes in her poem, Instructions on Not Giving Up. The leaves come, patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. A return to the strange idea of continuous living, despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say. A new slick leaf, unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. One of the things we have been doing, perhaps wintering and letting things go on for a little while, you may notice, those of you here in the sanctuary, that we still have this lovely Christmas tree up here. We are past the 12 days of Christmas, and so it is time for this tree to come down. So I invite those who want to help out after the service in disassembling our tree so that we can continue to move into what season comes next. And I'd like to give some quick thanks to those who have helped make this service possible, to Aimee Noel, our worship associate, and Kevin Matthey, our music director, and Lynn Prager, who helped lead us in hymns this morning, and Todd and Anna for helping out with our meditation on the 4 seasons, and Conrad up in our crow's nest, and our ushers and the folks at the welcome desk, and helping out with those helping out, setting up for our coffee hour, which will be in the pavilion immediately after the service, and the folks on Zoom helping to make sure that those who are there are welcomed and oriented. It is through all of your work that this congregation operates. We cannot do it alone, and so thanks. And now I invite you to please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn, Go Lift It Up, number 1057 in your teal hymnals. And we'll sing it twice.
Go lift it up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day. Go lift it up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day.
Can you keep that music just going for a little bit for us, Kevin? Thank you. Now just keep it going. It's just nice to have a little bit of music. As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to, if you feel comfortable, to reach out and make a connection, hold a hand, or touch a shoulder, again, make sure the person by you feels comfortable. It is okay if not. To those of you joining us on Zoom, we invite you to send your energy here, and we send it back to you. The words of the Reverend Dr. Andrew Pakula: may you know fully and deeply the blessings of each of your heart's seasons, the inward turning of winter, springtime's lush renewal, the effortless, steady growth of summer, and autumn's rich harvest. May your passage from season to season be blessed, each by hands to hold and by the light of love to guide you on. Blessed be, Ashe, Amen.